Good evening. From Jerusalem tonight, a dramatic statement from Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who has declared that the Gaza war has reached what he calls the decisive stage. Nearly 2 years into this conflict, Israel is preparing for what may become its most intense and costly offensive yet. In a video address released by the government press office, Netanyahu looked directly into the camera, speaking not only to the Israeli public, but also to the thousands of troops now mobilizing. He praised their sacrifices, reminding both regular and reserve soldiers of the difficult choices made during this war. Then, with solemn determination, he delivered his most striking words: "Now we are at the decisive stage." The Prime Minister's tone was designed to inspire confidence. He told his soldiers that throughout the war, Israel had carried out operations that many believed impossible, but that they succeeded because of the strength of the military and the unity of the nation. His words carried both reassurance and urgency, signaling that the coming days could define not only the trajectory of this war, but Israel's place in the region for years to come. Yet beyond his rhetoric, the realities on the ground are stark. Gaza City, once a bustling economic hub, is now bracing for an Israeli military push that many predict will be fierce, bloody, and devastating. The city has already endured relentless bombardments, but Israel's leaders believe capturing it is essential for what they describe as a sweeping victory. Aid agencies warn of catastrophe. Food, water, and medicine supplies are critically low, and the arrival of humanitarian convoys has slowed to a trickle. For civilians, the so-called decisive stage translates into one thing: a desperate struggle to survive. The war itself began nearly 2 years ago in October 2023, after a shocking wave of attacks launched from Gaza. What followed was a spiral of violence unprecedented in its scale and duration. Israel responded with massive force, pushing deeper into the territory than in any previous campaign. For Palestinians, it has meant mass displacement, shattered infrastructure, and an unrelenting humanitarian crisis. For Israel, it has been a test of endurance, militarily, politically, and socially. Inside Israel, Netanyahu's words have ignited debate. Supporters argue that the Prime Minister is providing strong leadership in the face of existential threats. They see his call for a decisive stage as a sign that the end of the conflict could be within reach. But critics accuse him of prolonging the war, using the crisis to bolster his own political standing at home. In Tel Aviv and other cities, protests have flared once again, demanding accountability for the government's handling of the war and calling for a renewed diplomatic path instead of endless fighting. Internationally, Netanyahu's declaration has been closely watched. In Washington, American officials remain cautious, reaffirming Israel's right to defend itself, but also pressing for restraint to avoid spiraling regional escalation. European capitals, from Paris to Berlin, are echoing calls for an immediate ceasefire and humanitarian corridors. At the United Nations, the Security Council has convened multiple sessions, warning that Gaza is on the brink of what they call a humanitarian collapse. Still, the political reality remains unchanged. Israel continues to prepare for its largest urban military operation in decades. For the people of Gaza, Netanyahu's statement is not just political theatre, it is a foreshadowing of even harsher days ahead. Families displaced multiple times already now face the prospect of losing what little they still have. Schools have been turned into shelters, hospitals into overcrowded triage centres, and entire neighbourhoods into rubble. Aid groups describe conditions as unbearable, warning of famine, disease, and mass casualties if the offensive intensifies. On the military front, analysts caution that the campaign to capture Gaza City could prove far more complex than Israeli leaders project. Urban combat, fought block by block and building by building, often neutralizes technological advantages and comes at extraordinary human cost. Veterans recall the lessons of the 2006 Lebanon War, where Israeli forces encountered fierce resistance in similarly dense terrain. The risks, they say, are enormous for soldiers and civilians alike. Still, Netanyahu has tied his political legacy to the promise of victory. By invoking the words decisive stage, he has sought to rally his nation, reassure his troops, and send a message to Israel's adversaries. But such language carries weight. It raises expectations at home, creates pressure abroad, and intensifies scrutiny of every move made by the Israeli Defense Forces. As Israel masses its reservists and prepares for the next phase of its war in Gaza, the world is left to ask, decisive for whom? For Israel, the goal is a sweeping victory over Hamas and the restoration of security. For Palestinians, it is a struggle simply to endure under fire. And for the international community, it is yet another reminder that in this long war, every decisive moment only seems to open the door to deeper tragedy. Tonight, as tanks line up on the borders, as families in Gaza huddle in makeshift shelters, and as political leaders in world capitals debate the way forward, one truth is clear. The decisive stage Netanyahu declared is not just a military strategy, it is a gamble, one with consequences that will echo far beyond the battlefield. From Jerusalem, this is the latest chapter in a war that shows no signs of ending. And as the world holds its breath, the question remains whether decisive action will bring peace or unleash an even greater storm.